And before I actually start the introduction, I would like to thank Mr. Feist for having us link to his website, which it's either you or your webmaster. I'm not sure.
Yeah, blame John.
Okay, John, okay.
Yeah, he does so much business with you guys, I figure he's getting a discount for it.
But it's always nice when our authors let people know that we're going to have signed copies of their book. Okay. Most people, when they turn 65,
it's the new 40.
It's the new 40, yes it is. Think about slowing down. You know, they think about retiring, you know, kicking back. Well, I think when you're a writer, you can't really do that because you can't really, like, stop writing.
Actually, for me, it's the IRS and my ex-wife's lawyer.
So, long ago and far, far away in a kingdom, back in 1982, which is close to 30 years ago. I know. We were first introduced to the Rift War series with the Magician's Apprentice. Yes. 28 titles later, this is our 28th title in this.
29 including Fairy Tale.
29. Well, okay, all right. I'll give you that one. All right. 29 titles later, and it's still going strong. Along the way, though, however, there have been other works, including short stories, graphic novels, a nonfiction book, and stories in anthologies. So I don't think that Mr. Feist is going to slow down anytime soon. However, he is wrapping up the Rift War series, but that doesn't mean that he won't start something else. So please welcome Mr. Ray Feist.
As I said a few minutes ago, I realized as I was driving down here that I'm getting to that point where I really can't talk about much other than stuff you already read. Last year, I actually remember I wanted to get into the trope of doing the right thing, and which is the underlying, you know, raison d'etre for Pug's existence and why he's the way he is. And in fact, in the book that I'm just finishing up now, A Crown Imperiled, there is a scene in there where that finally comes to the surface in a confrontation between Pug and his son Magnus about, you know, what is the price? You know, at what point do you just throw the towel and say, fine, I can't do anymore? And for the sake of argument, because I don't want to spoil anything for you, let's just say that it's as close to a lose-lose as those two characters can get in failing to understand each other. Because they're both very, very smart people, but for very different reasons, they both have a very different emotional landscape, and the way in which they interact is kind of weird. And I've been, you know, getting emails and notes on my mailing list from fans over the years about, you know, well, Magnus is kind of, you know, the cipher. He just really doesn't show a lot. And the answer is yes. And your point is? It's like somebody who wrote me and said, well, I really don't like Miranda. And I go, good, you're not supposed to. You know, she's really annoying. Pug's in love with her, but I wouldn't date her. And that brings me to a slightly tangential topic, which is that people mistakenly have the idea that authors either like certain kinds of behaviors because they have characters express that, and I always find it amusing because they always look at the protagonist or the group of quote heroes and say, well, the author must believe, you know, and they never say, well, gee, you know, he's got this earth-eating monster that's about to devour Cleveland. I guess he's in favor of utter destruction and hopelessness and chaos.
Well, but it's just Cleveland.
Well, it's Cleveland. Cleveland's actually a pretty nice town once you
Thank you very much.
spend some time. I mean, I have a really good opera company, and ballet, and not so much, but good restaurants, and mostly I think they're there to make the weather in Chicago look reasonable. You know, because Green Bay was busy or something. But I really haven't given a lot of thought to how much I want to kind of put some ideas out there, because I keep thinking I don't want to do the world's biggest spoiler, you know, and say, and then you find out, you know, Pug wakes up and it's all a dream and he's got to get off the beach. Because somebody on my mailing list actually suggested that. Oh, I'm sorry. Back to one? Back to one, okay. Hi, I'm Raymond Feist. Okay, so what can I talk about? Okay, one of the questions that was asked many books ago, which gets asked again in this one, or I may have moved that chapter to the next one, but it's either this one or the next one, where about, well, what are the gods doing about all this bad batshit crazy stuff that's going on? And the answer is, we are the agents of the gods. So I can talk a little bit about that because I don't think it's going to be a shock to those of you who have read everything. But I get into what the nature of the gods are, because I want to keep pointing back to this one thing that I dropped in Prince of the Blood and have referred to a couple of times, which is there is no such thing as magic. And Nacor, especially his perception of that. If you think of it as a dynamic system, a world much like this one, but one in which energy manifests itself slightly differently, and certain people are adept at plugging into it and manipulating it. And that basically Nacor was a physicist in the wrong space-time. He should have been some lunatic at Caltech blowing shit up, and, getting Nobel Prizes for it, and or just the best goddamn Texas Hold'em player in the history of Vegas, or both.
That would have made Nacor very happy.
Say playing cards with a physicist could be scary. But the idea that I'm trying to get across here is that, looking for a fresh approach to fantasy, those many years ago, I kept wondering, well, how does all this stuff work? And being very frustrated with the idea of, well, it's just magic. I thought, well, we got to come up with a better answer than that. So I'm a little slow. It took me 30 books, but we're getting there. The idea, foremost in my mind, is that everything has to do there's two tasks assigned to these books. One, they have to entertain, and two, they have to give you people to plug into and identify with, or at least care about in some sense, so that it doesn't become this terribly abstract notion of universe building. I mean, I made the mistake early on in my career, after I hit the New York Times bestseller list, suddenly I was a real popular guy with wannabe writers who just couldn't wait to show me, their 844 pages of world building. And it's like, fine, where's the story? Oh, I haven't written that yet. I still got more details to do. I'm going, fine, it's a game, publish it. Because it ain't a novel. The thing about storytelling, I believe, is that it has to resonate at some level, even if it's just, like Terry Pratchett, just making you hit your forehead a lot and going, oh my God, he didn't say that. And groaning a lot, and then laughing a lot. And just going, this is really entertaining, silly shit. A couple of other guys who do that pretty well were Bob Aspirin and Chris Stashik. Very funny stuff. You didn't really think, when you were reading their books, that the characters were really in jeopardy. You pretty much didn't care, because you wanted to know when the next joke was coming. So that was really high on the entertaining side. At the other end of the spectrum, I think we'll pick on Steve Donaldson. I had a couple of drinks with Steve in Chicago at the, I think it was the second World Fantasy Convention there. And for anybody who's heard Steve speak, he's a marvelous speaker. A man of strong opinions, which is true pretty much anybody who's got tenure. And anyway, so he was sitting there smoking his cigar. The guy loves his big stogies. And he was going, Feist, your problem is you don't write serious fantasy. And I said, Steve, I'm pretty sure if you look in the dictionary or a good thesaurus, you're not going to see serious means unrelentingly grim. I'm pretty sure when I slogged my way through the Thomas Covenant stuff, I don't remember a joke, except for maybe Foam Follower, because he was like the last of a dying race, and what did he have to lose? But somewhere in the middle is the stuff I'm trying to write. I'm trying to be a little bit pixie-like at moments, and I think my favorite characters to write for that kind of thing are, of course, guys like Amos and Jimmy and Nacor. The ones with all the good lines. And then I try to present my tragedy in the context of a human experience. I get really angry notes from people when they see characters just step off the curb and get hit by buses. You know, it's like, what do you mean Roland got killed chasing down, pig robbers or whatever it was, cattle thieves. And, Greylock got killed because somebody was cleaning a gun and it went off, I mean, it's like, because that's the way the universe works. It's often very random and arbitrary. And you don't get to negotiate a great death scene. I did one great obligatory death scene when Lord Boric died. I figured, okay, gotta have one of those. They got really angry when Prince Arutha fell off his horse and broke a hip at 86 and died off camera. Well, anybody who's lost an older relative to a broken hip knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know what happens. Ultimately, it's about portraying really fantastic, silly, crazy, improbable madness in a context where you buy into it from, I think, a contemporary point of view. If I have any vanity at all about what I do, it's that there's a very contemporary feeling to my characters, and I did that intentionally. I started with Magician saying, okay, who are these people relative to our common experiences in this culture? I had no idea, by the way, that the books would eventually be translated into 26 languages and be out there in 150 countries. So I really don't know. I mean, I don't, read or speak, Japanese, Chinese. Actually, I don't read or speak anything except English, and there's some debate about that. So the idea that, that same rhythm of narrative style and that same characterization came across in like the Japanese translation, I don't know. Parenthetically, there's two books that the Japanese have never gotten translated, and that was Servant of the Empire and Daughter of the Mistress of the Empire. And that's because they bought the rights to Daughter of the Empire, and then decided that they weren't going to buy the next two because, for Japan, they weren't exotic enough.
That makes sense.
Well, okay, it's kind of an Asian trope. They got some 15th, 16th century stuff that's actually better, but I wasn't going to admit to that.